Good morning. It is Thursday, August 12th. I am independent journalist Georgia Ford on with Benjamin Dixon this morning. Thank you so much for joining us. In the last week, there have been 94,000 new COVID cases among children in just the last week. We've seen hospitals across the country report that they are running out of ICU beds. And this is proving that we're on the other spectrum of the pandemic. If you remember, at the beginning of the pandemic, the most vulnerable population was senior citizens, the elders of our community. And they were among the first to get vaccinated. But now, because there are no vaccinations available for children under 12, we're seeing our children become our most vulnerable population. Take a listen at what President Biden had to say about this growing issue.
I understand that there are millions of people who decided, adults, who decided not to get vaccinated. And I understand that to badger those folks is not likely to get them to move and get vaccinated. But I also understand that the reason children are becoming infected is because in most cases they live in low vaccination rate states and communities, and they're getting it from unvaccinated adults. That's what's happening. And so my plea is that for those who are not vaccinated, think about it. God willing, the FDA is going to be coming out in a reasonable time frame to say this vaccine is totally safe. We've seen millions of doses around the world, 1 billion doses already. And we know how it's transmitted. And one of the things that I find a little disingenuous, when I suggest that people in zones where there is a high risk wear the mask like you all are doing, I'm told that government should get out of the way.
You know, and I think we can pause there, Ben, to that point about the masks and knowing that masks have been scientifically proven to help stop the spread. And the president is acknowledging the fact that people don't want to wear it. But, yesterday, really what I want to ask you, Ben, yesterday you made a post where you simply said, shut it down.
Yeah.
What is it going to take? What is it going to take? Because 94,000 children diagnosed with COVID. We're running out of ICU beds in pediatric units and hospitals across the country. How many more children have to be affected by this issue before President Biden addresses the nation and simply just shuts it down?
That's right. President Biden is doing his due diligence almost to a fault, but I understand it. I understand the due diligence that's necessary to be kind to people who are making this decision. I don't think people who are deciding to not get the vaccine are making that decision lightly. But y'all are dead wrong. I do respect the fact that Joe Biden is trying to tread carefully to be respectful to those people because they're human beings and they still deserve compassion and empathy. But if we bring up the map of the new infections since July versus what's happening right now in August, I think we are out of time, Georgia, for patience with people who are creating more COVID-19 patients in our children.
Yeah, when you take a look even at the world map and you see in comparison to, so this is our country.
Dr. Fauci, do you agree with Randy Weingarten, the head of the largest
how high the rates are here in our country? But even if you compare that internationally, I mean, there's just no comparison to the number of cases we have here in comparison to other countries who are making these mandates, who do not have a portion of the population who is feeling like this is a form of oppression. The rest of the world understands in order to get this thing under control, in order to get back to some type of normalcy, we have to get vaccinated and we have to wear the mask. And you can clearly see here that the numbers are showing too many people here don't want to get vaccinated. Too many people here feel like wearing a mask is a political statement.
That's exactly right. And they are committed to their politics even unto death. That's the part that is there's two sides of this. There are those, and maybe if we take our time to parse this anti-vax / anti-mask movements, there are two different movements. There are the movements of those people who are just they're just not into vaccines, and they've been reading on YouTube and they've been Googling on websites, and fine. But people are dying. 1,000 people died yesterday. Then there's the other side of it. There's the political action that's being taken by white supremacists, fascists, Donald Trump supporters, Republicans, Rand Paul. They're actively sabotaging our recovery from this pandemic. And so there are two different groups that are at play here, but all of them combine to the 94,000 cases in children that we see spreading across this country.
And I thought it was interesting. The president mentioned how, it's adults who are spreading it. But I also think that there's a number of factors that play here. You have corporations who are now requiring employees to return to the workplace. That's causing environments like super spread environments. And it's also then positioning parents who were able to try and juggle working from home and distance learning. Now it's requiring parents to find somewhere to send their kids. And oftentimes you send your kids, if they're young, preschool, around groups of other children, you don't know whether or not the teachers there have been vaccinated. And then that creates a super spreader environment for the children. We've seen concerts and music festivals and church services with thousands of people in the congregation not wearing a mask. So I don't think, it's just adults. I also think it's the fact that the politicians refuse to mandate masks. They refuse to shut it down when the numbers are clearly showing that there is a dire need to do something, because there's absolutely no reason why 94,000 children deserve to be diagnosed with COVID and potentially hospitalized.
Yeah. And sadly, there's a possibility even see people like to play the percentages game. Right. They're like, oh, it's only 1% fatal. And I think that number is higher. But that's what that's what they like to say online. Do you want your child to be in that 1% of this 94,000? If we're really cavalier with the percentage of survival rate, are you comfortable with your so then let's get vaccinated. We cannot continue to coddle the conspiracy theorists in our community. We cannot continue to coddle those who are anti-science. We cannot continue to coddle those who are committed to their politics, even unto death. We have to confront them head on. And part of it is exactly what you said, Georgia. Politicians are afraid of being unpopular. Well, I would rather be unpopular than to have 94,000 kids infected with COVID-19. And secondly, Joe Biden also owns some culpability here. We got to call a thing. He's also pushing kids back into the schools. He said last week that he wants schools fully opened, right? Those that on the best of days, when the sun is shining and the wind is blowing just right and there's not a cloud in the sky, kids come home from school with all kinds of viruses because it is a living incubator, a petri dish of diseases and colds and viruses. We're in a pandemic and we're sending our kids back to school. That is as much responsible for this as the parents who haven't gotten vaccinated.
In my daughter's school, they actually sent out a note where they were going to be taking responses from parents, polling whether or not parents are actually on board with it. However, I made the decision 2 years ago, so before the pandemic, to put my daughter in a charter school so that she wouldn't be caught up in, this mass decision making that they do in the public school system that oftentimes doesn't factor in our circumstances, right? Because it's just too large of a system. Whereas with the charter schools, you can actually talk to the principal and you have more, your concerns and your questions have more weight just because the system is not as big. So we'll see how that goes. I've also seen a few states start to mandate that teachers will be required to show proof of their vaccination. So
That's right.
it seems like we're starting to move in that direction. But I mean, when you're looking at the numbers of 94,000 kids getting COVID in 1 week, come on, you can't really think that sending our kids back to school is the best decision, not only for our children, but for our country. And that brings me to a school board meeting where you had doctors who were sharing the facts of wearing the mask, sharing the facts of the vaccine, sharing the facts about the pandemic. And I want you guys to see, this is very disturbing. I want you to see, and this happened in Tennessee, how parents in Tennessee treated doctors who came in and said that masks should absolutely be worn and that vaccines do help fight off COVID. Is this in the same country where 94,000 children were just diagnosed with COVID?
Did you see the sign that said, "My child, my choice"? My child, my choice. You're choosing your child to get COVID-19. We need to take children from, I'm sorry. At this juncture, if you are willingly putting your child at risk, you are not qualified to be a parent talking about my child, my choice. And you're creating, it's one thing to be an essential worker and to be forced into a situation where you do not have a choice. There are so many Americans, because of this capitalistic system, that never had the choice to homeschool, never had the choice to do anything but keep slaving in this system to make sure that people like Jeff Bezos hit their quarterly profit margin, right? So that has been a reality. But these people got money. They got time. They got resources. They could be protecting their children, but they're using their children as political props, and they are unqualified parents.
You know, unfortunately, what happened inside of the school board meeting was just surface level. If we can run this clip back, and I want you guys to hear how the doctors were treated. They were followed. You can see this one doctor being followed to his vehicle, threatened. Take a look. We're going to start this from the top and turn up the volume so you guys can take a listen.
And everybody's taking notes, buddy. Keep that little smug. Yeah.
Put it back on. Put your mask on.
Poor kids stuck in that bacteria. How do you like that? We know who you are. We know who you are.
Keep it calm.
No more masks.
Keep it calm. Keep it calm.
No more masks.
We're on these guys' side. They're on our side.
No, they're not. They're not on our side.
The police are on our side. The police are on our side. Let's calm down.
Yes.
Calm down. We know who you are. We know who you are. You can leave freely, but we will find you, and we know who you are.
You will never be allowed in public again. You will never be allowed.
You'll never let us be allowed in public again. Hey, sir. I know who you are. Let him out. Let's let him out.
Watch out. You better watch out.
Keep it.
You better watch out.
Keep it calm. Everybody back up. Please. Everybody back up. We don't even peace, but we know who you are. You know who you are. Fuck you.
Ben, I'm not sure if that was your first time seeing this, but what are your initial thoughts?
White folks done lost their mind. That's my initial response. But my more, pragmatic response is that this is in Tennessee, Williamson County, and I'm trying to figure out if this is the same county as the church that is headed up by Greg Locke, who we cover on a regular basis, who is also in Tennessee. And every Sunday at these people's churches, whether they are at Greg Locke's church or another church, they are constantly being fed the type of rhetoric that would drive them into this type of frenzy, right? They're threatening people over masks. So when I say they've lost their minds, I really don't mean to be ableist as much to say they have lost all sense of reason. And they are acting like brutish beasts. And here we are. They're sacrificing their children on the altar of their bigotry.
I also want to know why the officers didn't make any arrests. I mean, when you heard the two men saying, "We will find you."
That's right. That's a threat.
That is a threat.
That is a threat.
That is a threat. And yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say it's a threat, but our guy right there in the pink shirt, he said, be calm because they're on our side. The cops are on our side. The cop probably believes the same excuse me, Georgia, I'm so sorry. They believe the same doggone thing that these guys believe. So those cops are there to protect them, not the scientists. And so when I do pull up in Tennessee, I'm gonna have to contact the NFAC to make sure we have security everywhere we go, because we cannot depend on police to protect us. Obviously.
Yeah, it is. I mean, we always have to do this. If this was a crowd full of Black individuals who were expressing their thoughts and opinions this aggressively.
Yeah.
Now, not only when they ran up on the car and said, "We will find you," but then there's a second moment where you see the vehicle get stopped in the crowd when he starts to drive up. Somebody would have been going to jail if this was a group of Black people.
That's right. Or did. Most certainly we cannot gather like this and sing "We Shall Overcome" without the police pointing towards us, turning their faces towards us in opposition to us, to protect the system from us. So if this had been a room, first of all, it ain't gonna be a room of Black people. I know we got a lot of conspiracy theorists in our community, and we got to address that later on today. But if you look at this video, we ain't packing. Most of us Black folks ain't gonna be packing up in no room with a whole bunch of folks with no mask on like this. So there is a lot of overlap in terms of politics, conspiracy theory, bigotry, and race in this video right here.
Yeah. Yeah, well, and to look at this entire group and not identify a single Black person, I think, you're seeing who is at the forefront of keeping this pandemic going. You're seeing who is at the forefront of continuing to spread misinformation. The folks here who are acting aggressively, It's frustrating because all I can juxtapose this with is 94,000 children diagnosed with COVID. The fact that ICU beds are running out in hospitals across the country. And so, yes, we can blame whoever we want to blame. But I can guarantee you something. The group of individuals in these clips are partially responsible.
Yeah. Yes, Georgia, they are. We are at a very dangerous time. And I want to shift to something that you always ask us to do, something that Brother Mac always asks us to do, James, Rebecca, all of us are constant, and even our audience. How do we change this? How do we take action? We take action by making sure you protect your family, your community, your neighbors, those that you can. Because we are in a time, in a very, very serious time in history, where when our descendants, if we are so lucky to not have destroyed the planet through climate change or destroyed our species through this pandemic, our descendants are going to look back at this time in history and wonder how it is that we survived this stupidity. And those of us who survive, it will be because we yielded to science and reason and not this bigotry and madness.
Absolutely. I was recently extremely stressed out. Those of you who know me know I have a 2-year-old, a 3-year-old, and a 13-year-old. And my younger two have never been in daycare. But it was getting to the point where my husband and I were considering maybe we should put them in daycare. He is self-employed. I'm self-employed. We both work a lot, and it just gets to be a bit much trying to juggle it all while also being in a pandemic. And so we were considering putting them in daycare, and then it's just like, as much relief as that would provide for us in terms of our schedules and being able to just hyper focus on our work, give us a break, maybe allow us to get a lunch date in.
Yeah.
We started to
it would be nice,
about, right? Yeah, that would be lovely. It'd be great. A breakfast date, something. But we started to think about putting our 2- and 3-year-old who cannot get vaccinated in a small room full of a dozen or more other children and adults who we can't control whether or not they wear masks. We can't force them to get vaccinated. I don't even think it's legal for us to ask them to show us that they have been vaccinated. And so, we started thinking about that, and it's just like, as much as we feel like we need the relief, it's something that we're just going to have to delay and postpone. And I also want to encourage other people, because I know we're not the only family out here who's ready to get back to normal, who feels like they need a break. So we started thinking about it differently. We started thinking about taking that same amount of money, because you guys know that daycare is not cheap.
Come on, somebody.
We're like, well, maybe if we take that same amount of money that we are going to allocate to daycare to finding a nanny, one individual who we trust and know that has been vaccinated, to come into our home, so that we lessen the amount of exposure. And so I want to just encourage people. I know that it's challenging to navigate, but be hopeful and be creative in the solutions that you're trying to find for your family. And don't give up in seeking them, because just that small pivot. And in my mind, I would have thought I could never afford a nanny. But there's quite a few people out here who are offering those services, especially in light of the mass furloughs and people really not wanting to be in the workplace. And so when you rethink about it that way, if I could get some care for my children and only expose them to one person versus exposing them to 20 or 30, to me, that feels like a much safer approach. And obviously nothing's fail proof, but at least you're doing what you can to mitigate the exposure.
I love that. I love that solution. And I'm actually later on today, you all spoke last week with the sister, and forgive me, I have her name, but the sister who has the homeschooling program that you all interviewed. I'm going to be speaking with her today, because we have to, as Black people, we have to create our own solutions. I think it is very clear that this country will abandon us. They will watch our children die and then say, oh, well, yeah, they were supposed to wear masks, but they took their mask off. Sorry, that's what the rule said. When they created the conditions in the first place, knowing full well that children are not going to wear masks in school. So I love your solution, Georgia, and I'm actually going to get with you offline and let's talk about that, because I need to do the same thing. Because what we're going to try to do here in our family, we're going to try to create a pod, basically a homeschooling pod, where we have one other family that we trust, and that we trust them enough that we will go to their house and that we will eat dinner with them. Because if our children are sharing air with their children, then we're sharing air with their parents. And we need to take that kind of approach to trust, and also like your solution of bringing someone into our home that we also know that we could trust because they've been vaccinated, and then we can build pods and small units of very small pockets of trust where we can survive and get through the rest of this pandemic, because the government is not going to take care of us.
And that's what it's going to take. It's going to take an innovative approach. It's going to take us, creating our own standards and setting our own rules, despite the fact that the president even is encouraging us to send our children back to school, corporations mandating that we return to the workplace. I've had so many people who want to have in-person meetings. And, we learned one thing in the pandemic. It's that technology can really help us stay connected. And so I think that it's time, if you've been out and you got to go out to eat and, maybe go to a concert, do a couple of things that you missed, hold on to those memories. But maybe it's time to start scaling back, because you know, if we're not a part of the solution, we're part of the problem.
That's right.
And so when this is all said and done, 94,000 children in 1 week. And if you've been out and about and you've been in space with children, you weren't wearing a mask, they weren't wearing a mask, you are a part of the problem. You are partially responsible, whether you're vaccinated or you're not. The reality of it is, if you're not staying at home, if you're not doing what you can to stop the spread, then you are a part of the problem. And that's the part that a lot of people don't want to take responsibility for, the fact that, yeah, I'm vaccinated, so I don't need to wear my mask, but you could be spreading the virus, even if you're not going to be infected by it and have these symptoms. We've heard from scientists who say, even if you're vaccinated, you should be wearing your mask because you could potentially spread the virus to other people who are not vaccinated, including children.
Exactly, Georgia. And here's the thing. Well, shout out to On and On It Goes, aka the Shade